18 years ago, a 19-year-old nursing student in Princeton, New Jersey, disappeared while walking home from her evening shift at a local hospital. Her devastated family searched tirelessly as police investigated a potential abduction after finding her backpack abandoned near a park. With minimal evidence and no body recovered, the case slowly faded from headlines. But her father refused to surrender hope, maintaining a daily ritual that touched the community's heart. For years, he placed fresh flowers on their front step every morning, believing his daughter would someday return home. Then, after nearly 2 decades of silence, a revolutionary forensic technique revealed an overlooked detail that exposed a chilling truth. Someone the community had trusted for years was hiding a deadly secret. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. On November 8, 2007, Princeton, New Jersey was bathed in early winter twilight. The prestigious university campus glowed with warm lights, while students hurried across leaf-covered walkways, bundled against the evening chill. Just 3 miles from this picture-perfect scene, Olivia Bennett, a 19-year-old nursing student at Mercer County Community College, ended her volunteer shift at Princeton Medical Center. The clock showed 8:45 p.m. when Olivia texted her father, James Bennett, that she was walking home. Their apartment was just a 20-minute walk through a well-lit neighborhood and along the edge of Harrison Park. She mentioned stopping briefly at Wagner Pharmacy to pick up her father's heart medication. It was routine. She had made this walk dozens of times before. "Be there in 30, don't wait up, Dad," her final text read, followed by a heart emoji. James, a widower who had raised Olivia alone since her mother died of cancer when she was 12, replied with a simple, "Be safe." He placed her dinner in the microwave and settled in his armchair to watch the evening news, expecting to hear her key in the door shortly. By 9:30 p.m. the apartment remained silent. James checked his phone repeatedly, sending 2 messages that went unanswered. When the clock struck 10 p.m., with no sign of Olivia, unease crept into his chest. At 10:30 p.m. he called her phone. It rang several times before going to voicemail. Her cheerful voice asking to leave a message now felt hauntingly distant. By midnight, James had called the police 3 times and driven the route between the hospital and their home twice. The pharmacy confirmed Olivia had picked up the medication around 9 p.m., but had left immediately. The night manager remembered her clearly. The sweet nursing student, always asking about my grandkids. Dawn broke with no word from Olivia. Princeton Police Department officially classified her as missing and began organizing search teams. Her photo, showing a young woman with auburn hair, bright hazel eyes, and a warm smile that reached those eyes, was distributed throughout Princeton. The image of her in scrubs, her nursing lanyard around her neck, captured both her ambition and kindness. That morning brought the first disturbing discovery. A jogger found a backpack tossed into the bushes near the eastern entrance of Harrison Park. Inside were Olivia's nursing textbooks, wallet with ID, and the prescription bag from Wagner Pharmacy. Her phone was missing. The backpack showed signs of a struggle, a torn strap, contents disheveled. Most concerning was a small bloodstain on the interior lining. When James identified the backpack as Olivia's, his legs nearly gave out. Detective Sarah Kaplan, a veteran officer with 15 years on the force, steadied him as his face drained of color. "We'll find her," she promised, a commitment she would carry for years to come. By afternoon, Harrison Park transformed from a peaceful recreation area into a crime scene. Yellow police tape cordoned off the eastern entrance, while officers combed through every inch of grass, dirt, and surrounding woodland. Canine units followed scent trails that frustratingly led to the nearby road, then disappeared, suggesting Olivia might have been forced into a vehicle. Princeton, known for its prestigious university and peaceful neighborhoods, was shaken to its core. Within hours, hundreds of volunteers, students, hospital staff, neighbors, and strangers touched by the story joined search efforts. They formed lines moving systematically through wooded areas, drainage ditches, and abandoned buildings. The hospital where Olivia volunteered sent entire departments in shifts to help search while maintaining essential services. The local news stations arrived quickly, broadcasting live from Harrison Park. Reporters stood solemn-faced against the backdrop of search teams and police activity. Headlines reading, "Nursing Student Vanishes," and "Princeton Community Searches for Missing Teen" dominated every channel. By evening, Olivia's story had reached national news. James Bennett became the face of heartbreaking determination. Camera crews captured him searching tirelessly, calling Olivia's name until his voice grew hoarse. When interviewed, his words were always the same. "My daughter is out there. She needs me to find her. I won't stop until she's home." His unwavering belief that Olivia was alive inspired the community to keep searching even as days passed. 3 days into the investigation, a crucial witness came forward. Martin Weber, an elderly man who lived in an apartment overlooking the park's entrance, reported seeing a dark blue sedan parked near the eastern gate around 9:15 p.m. on the night Olivia disappeared. He noticed because the car's headlights remained on for nearly 20 minutes before suddenly turning off. When asked why he hadn't mentioned this sooner, he admitted he hadn't connected it to the disappearance until seeing the news coverage. "The car looked out of place," Weber told detectives. "It was a darker blue, older model. Maybe a Honda or Toyota. Not fancy, but well kept. What struck me was how it just sat there, engine running, lights on. Then suddenly everything went dark." This information sparked a new direction in the investigation. Police requested security footage from businesses along the route Olivia would have taken. Most had limited camera coverage, but a gas station 2 blocks from the park captured a glimpse of a dark sedan driving away from the park's direction at 9:40 p.m., timing that aligned with Weber's account. The footage was too grainy to identify the license plate or driver, but confirmed the presence of a vehicle matching the description. Meanwhile, the blood from Olivia's backpack was analyzed. Results confirmed it was indeed Olivia's blood, but the amount was small, consistent with a minor injury rather than a life-threatening wound. This offered a glimmer of hope that perhaps she had been injured but was still alive. James clung to this possibility. In his apartment, he created what neighbors called Olivia's command center. Maps covered the walls with pins marking searched areas. A large whiteboard listed every lead, witness statement, and theory. Photos of Olivia smiled from every surface. Olivia at her high school graduation, Olivia in her volunteer uniform, Olivia hiking with her father last summer. The apartment became both a shrine to his missing daughter and headquarters for a father's desperate search. A week after the disappearance, another troubling detail emerged. Olivia's phone records showed her last text to her. Father was sent at 8:47 p.m. The pharmacy confirmed. Her visit around 9 p.m., but her phone last pinged a cell tower at 9:22 p.m. near the eastern edge of Harrison Park, then nothing. The phone either died or was deliberately turned off. Those crucial 22 minutes between her pharmacy visit and the last phone ping became the timeline focus. What happened during that short walk? Who was waiting in that blue sedan? Princeton police expanded the investigation, bringing in state resources and FBI consultation for the potential kidnapping case. 2 weeks after Olivia vanished, the initial media frenzy began to subside. News vans became less frequent. National coverage shifted to newer stories. But Princeton remained vigilant. Missing person posters with Olivia's smiling face hung in every shop window, on campus bulletin boards, at bus stops and community centers. Her eyes followed residents throughout their daily routines, a constant reminder of the unresolved tragedy. The hospital where Olivia volunteered created a scholarship in her name. Her nursing school left an empty chair in classes she should have attended. Small memorials of flowers appeared near the park entrance where her backpack was found. For James Bennett, the diminishing public attention was unbearable. "It feels like the world is forgetting her," he told Detective Kaplan during one of her daily visits. "But I can't forget." "I won't." He developed a ritual that would eventually become legendary in Princeton. Every morning at dawn, he placed fresh flowers on the front step of their apartment building, Olivia's favorite daisies when in season, whatever blooms were available when they weren't. "She'll know which apartment is home when she returns," he explained to neighbors who asked. "The flowers will guide her back." This daily act of devotion moved the community deeply. Local florists began taking turns donating the daily flowers. When James caught the flu and couldn't leave his apartment, neighbors ensured the flowers appeared without fail. The ritual became a symbol of enduring hope that captured the heart of Princeton. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. 1 month after the disappearance, the investigation hit troubling obstacles. The blue sedan lead grew cold when police exhausted the limited visual evidence without identifying the vehicle or its owner. The surrounding county's databases of registered vehicles matching the description included thousands of possibilities. Too many to investigate individually without additional identifying details. Detective Kaplan refused to let the case fade. Unlike some colleagues who began referring to it as the Bennett situation, rather than an active investigation, she kept Olivia's file on her desk. Every morning, she reviewed the evidence, called contacts, and pushed lab technicians for faster results. Her dedication matched James Bennett's, creating a powerful alliance that would prove crucial in the years ahead. The discovery that profoundly altered the investigation came unexpectedly. A grounds maintenance worker at Harrison Park found a single earring while clearing fallen leaves near a maintenance shed approximately 200 yards from where the backpack was discovered. The small silver stud with a distinctive blue stone caught his attention because it appeared relatively new among the decaying leaves. When shown the earring, James immediately identified it as Olivia's, her mother's birthstone, he explained, voice breaking. She wore them every day since the funeral. The earring provided two critical insights. First, it expanded the potential crime scene, suggesting Olivia had been taken further into the park than initially believed. Second, forensic analysis revealed microscopic fibers embedded in the earring's clasp, fibers that didn't match Olivia's clothing from that night. These blue cotton fibers became a new focus. Lab tests identified them as likely from work uniforms, possibly utility or maintenance clothing. This led detectives to compile a list of all maintenance and utility workers with access to Harrison Park or who worked in the surrounding area. The list included dozens of names: park employees, city workers, contracted landscapers, and utility company personnel. Each person was interviewed, backgrounds checked, and alibis verified. Most cooperated fully, understanding the gravity of the situation. The process was painstaking, requiring weeks of detective work that ultimately eliminated most names from consideration. But 3 individuals had unclear alibis for the night of November 8th. Their names were flagged for further investigation. As winter settled over Princeton, the physical searches became more difficult. Snow covered potential evidence. Freezing temperatures limited how long volunteers could work. Yet James Bennett continued his searches, bundled against the cold, voice hoarse from calling his daughter's name across frozen landscapes. His daily flower ritual never wavered. On the harshest winter mornings, he brushed snow from the step before placing the blooms. Sometimes they froze within hours, becoming delicate ice sculptures, beautiful and heartbreaking monuments to his devotion. The community supported him however possible. Local restaurants ensured he ate properly, often delivering meals unasked. University students shoveled his walkway after snowfalls. Neighbors checked on him daily. His grief was collective, shared by a town that adopted his cause as their own. 3 months after Olivia's disappearance, a significant organizational change threatened the investigation. Budget constraints forced the Princeton Police Department to reassign personnel from cold cases to active crimes. Detective Kaplan was ordered to focus on new cases, with Olivia's file designated for periodic review rather than active pursuit. The meeting where this decision was announced became legendary within the department. Witnesses described how Kaplan stood before the police chief, removed her badge, and placed it on his desk. "Either I continue the Bennett case, or you accept my resignation," she stated simply. Her 15-year flawless service record and the community support for the investigation left the chief little choice. Kaplan kept the case, though with reduced resources. That evening, Kaplan visited James to explain the situation. They sat at his kitchen table, surrounded by Olivia's photos, case files, and maps. "I won't give up," she promised. "But progress will be slower now. We need to be strategic with the resources we have." James nodded, understanding the reality while appreciating her commitment. "We'll find her together," he said. It was the first time he'd included someone else in his unwavering mission. Their partnership, born of shared determination, would eventually become the key to unlocking the entire case. As winter melted into spring, new challenges emerged. Without regular media coverage, fewer tips came in. Search volunteers dwindled to a dedicated core group. The initial urgency faded for many as Princeton reluctantly adjusted to Olivia's absence, becoming part of the town's narrative rather than an active crisis. James refused to accept this shift. On the 100th day since Olivia's disappearance, he organized a community walk that retraced her likely route that November night. Hundreds participated, carrying candles and walking in silence from the hospital, past the pharmacy, to the park entrance where her backpack was found. The procession continued to the maintenance shed near where the earring was discovered. There, James addressed the gathered crowd. "My daughter walked this path 100 days ago. Someone saw something. Someone knows something. I'm begging you, if you have any information, no matter how small it seems, please come forward. Olivia deserves to come home." The emotional appeal, broadcast on local news, generated a fresh wave of tips. Most led nowhere, but one anonymous call mentioned seeing a park maintenance vehicle driving with headlights off near the eastern entrance around 9:30 p.m. that November night. The caller hadn't connected it to the disappearance until seeing the community walk coverage. This tip aligned disturbingly well with the blue fibers found on Olivia's earring, and the witness account of a vehicle with its lights suddenly turning off. Detective Kaplan immediately revisited the maintenance worker interviews, focusing particularly on those with access to park vehicles. One name stood out: Thomas Mercer, 42, a maintenance supervisor who had worked at Harrison Park for nearly 8 years. His initial interview noted he claimed to be home alone, watching television, the night Olivia disappeared. No one could verify his alibi. More concerning, he drove a dark blue Honda for personal use, matching the witness description. Kaplan began quietly investigating Mercer's background. His employment record showed consistent performance reviews and no complaints. Colleagues described him as quiet but reliable, often working late shifts alone. He lived in a small house about 15 minutes from the park, kept to himself but participated in community events when expected. On paper, he appeared unremarkable. Digging deeper revealed subtler concerns. Mercer had moved to Princeton in 1999, after leaving a similar position in Delaware abruptly. His references all checked out, but there was a curious gap in his employment history that had been overlooked during hiring. Additionally, he had 2 minor complaints from female park visitors about uncomfortable conversations that were documented but resulted in only verbal warnings. These details weren't enough for a warrant, but they justified closer attention. Kaplan began surveillance, documenting Mercer's routines, habits, and contacts. She noted he frequently worked late shifts alone at the park, had few social connections, and maintained rigid personal routines. For 3 weeks, Kaplan built a profile of Thomas Mercer, a man who blended perfectly into the background of Princeton life. A man who held keys to every building in Harrison Park, a man who knew the maintenance pathways and hidden areas better than anyone. A man who wore blue work uniforms daily. The break she needed came unexpectedly. While observing Mercer's house, Kaplan noticed him carefully washing his Honda in his driveway, a normal activity except for the meticulous attention he paid to the trunk. He spent over an hour cleaning just that section of the car, repeatedly applying cleaner and scrubbing intensely. This behavior, combined with the accumulated circumstantial evidence, convinced Kaplan to push for a search warrant. The judge was hesitant, given the limited direct evidence, but eventually approved a narrow warrant for Mercer's vehicle based on the witness description matching his car. The search was conducted while Mercer worked a day shift. Forensic technicians examined every inch of the Honda, focusing particularly on the trunk. Visual inspection revealed nothing unusual, but when they applied luminol, a chemical that detects traces of blood even after cleaning, the trunk lit up with an unmistakable bluish glow. Someone had bled in that trunk, and someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to clean it. Lab tests confirmed the devastating truth. The blood traces matched Olivia Bennett's DNA. The discovery of Olivia's blood in Thomas Mercer's trunk sent shockwaves through the Princeton Police Department. Within hours, officers obtained an expanded search warrant for Mercer's home, and Detective Kaplan coordinated a strategic arrest plan. They couldn't risk alerting him before securing all potential evidence. As Mercer finished his maintenance shift, officers approached him in the park's staff parking lot. His face remained eerily calm as they read his rights and placed him in handcuffs. When news of the arrest reached James Bennett, he collapsed into his armchair, hands trembling uncontrollably. The man they suspected of taking his daughter had been living just miles away for 3 months, continuing his job, shopping at local stores, attending community events, all while James placed flowers on his doorstep each morning, waiting for Olivia to return. He was at the community walk, James whispered to Detective Kaplan when she arrived at his apartment. I remember seeing him standing at the back of the crowd. I even nodded at him. The realization that he had made eye contact with the man suspected of abducting Olivia haunted James. It was a betrayal beyond comprehension. Princeton reeled from the arrest. Residents who knew Mercer from his work at the park struggled to reconcile the quiet maintenance supervisor with the monster police now described. Local news stations broadcast his employee photo alongside Olivia's smiling face. The juxtaposition was jarring, the ordinary-looking middle-aged man next to the vibrant nursing student whose life he may have stolen. The search of Mercer's modest ranch-style home yielded disturbing evidence. In his bedroom closet, investigators found a shoebox containing women's jewelry, including the matching earring to the one discovered in the park. Buried beneath garden tools in his garage was Olivia's missing phone, battery removed. Most damning was a hidden compartment beneath his bathroom floor containing blood-stained work gloves and a knife with traces of blood that matched Olivia's DNA. Despite this evidence, one critical element remained missing: Olivia herself. No trace of her body was found on Mercer's property or in surrounding areas. When interrogated, he maintained absolute silence, requesting a lawyer and refusing to answer any questions about Olivia's whereabouts. This silence tortured James Bennett. While the arrest brought some validation to his unwavering belief that something terrible had happened to his daughter, it offered no closure. Without Olivia, either alive or recovered, his daily ritual of placing flowers continued. Until I know for certain, he told neighbors who assumed he would stop now, I keep my promise to wait for her. Thomas Mercer was charged with kidnapping and attempted murder based on the blood evidence, but without a body, prosecutors worried about securing a murder conviction. The district attorney explained this challenge to James during a private meeting at the courthouse. We have strong circumstantial evidence, but juries want absolute certainty in capital cases. Without Olivia's remains, defense attorneys will suggest she could still be alive somewhere. James's response was resolute. Then we find her, whatever it takes. The initial hearing drew national attention. Media descended on Princeton's courthouse as Mercer appeared before the judge, expressionless, dressed in prison orange, saying nothing beyond not guilty when asked for his plea. Outside, hundreds gathered holding photos of Olivia and signs demanding justice. James stood silently among them, Detective Kaplan at his side. As spring turned to summer in 2008, The case against Mercer proceeded through legal preparations, while the search for Olivia expanded. Police focused on properties connected to Mercer, his previous residences, places he frequented, remote areas where he was known to fish or hike. Cadaver dogs and specialized search teams combed through miles of woodland surrounding Princeton. Dive teams explored local waterways, lakes, and quarries. James joined every search, abandoning his job as an electrical engineer to devote himself entirely to finding Olivia. Friends worried about his finances, but anonymous donations began appearing in his mailbox, envelopes containing grocery gift cards, cash, and notes of encouragement. Princeton had adopted his cause as their own, ensuring he could continue his search without worrying about survival. 6 months after Mercer's arrest, with Olivia still missing, the investigation reached a critical juncture. Without new evidence, momentum stalled. Detectives exhausted known leads, searched all logical locations, and hit dead ends at every turn. The district attorney warned that the case might weaken with time as public interest faded and witnesses' memories became less reliable. Detective Kaplan refused to accept this outcome. She requested permission to pursue a then unconventional investigative path, creating a comprehensive timeline of Thomas Mercer's life before Princeton. "If we understand his past, we might find where he took Olivia," she argued to skeptical superiors. People establish patterns. They return to familiar places when under stress. When granted reluctant approval, Kaplan began meticulously tracing Mercer's history. She discovered he had moved frequently throughout the Northeast, rarely staying in one location longer than 5 years. His employment record showed a pattern of maintenance positions at parks, schools, and recreational facilities, always roles with access to grounds, buildings, and minimal supervision. Most concerning was a gap in his history between 2002 and 2004, when he seemingly vanished from official records. No employment, no fixed address, no tax filings. He resurfaced in Connecticut in late 2004, before moving to Princeton in 2006. What happened during those missing years became Kaplan's obsession. Investigating this gap led her to a small town in upstate New York, where a local librarian remembered Mercer. He lived in a cabin near Blackwater Lake, she recalled. Kept to himself mostly, but came in for books about local history and geography. Always polite, but something about him made me uncomfortable. The mention of Blackwater Lake triggered an investigative breakthrough. Records showed the property had belonged to Mercer's deceased uncle, though Mercer never legally claimed ownership. The remote cabin sat on 20 acres of densely wooded land, approximately 4 hours from Princeton, easily reachable in a single night's drive. When Kaplan presented this finding to her superiors, they immediately organized a search operation. James insisted on accompanying them, despite police concerns for his emotional well-being. "I've seen everything imaginable in my nightmares already," he told Kaplan. "Nothing can be worse than not knowing." On a crisp October morning in 2008, nearly a year after Olivia's disappearance, a convoy of police vehicles traveled to Blackwater Lake. The cabin they found had clearly been abandoned for years, roof partially collapsed. Wildlife having reclaimed much of the structure, teams with ground-penetrating radar methodically surveyed the property, while cadaver dogs explored the surrounding woods. Hours into the search, a dog handler's whistle signaled a discovery. Behind the cabin, near the edge of the property where the land sloped toward a ravine, the dogs had alerted strongly to disturbed earth. As excavation began, James stood watching, his face a mask of determined calm that threatened to shatter at any moment. The first item recovered was a tattered piece of fabric that James instantly recognized, part of the scarf Olivia had been wearing the night she disappeared. As digging continued, investigators uncovered human remains buried approximately 4 feet below ground. Initial examination confirmed they belonged to a young woman. DNA testing later confirmed what everyone already knew. They had finally found Olivia Bennett. The discovery brought a torrent of emotions for James, devastating confirmation of his worst fears alongside the relief of finally knowing the truth. At the excavation site, he knelt beside the grave, placed a single daisy and whispered, "I found you, sweetheart." I never stopped looking. Princeton mourned collectively. The university cancelled classes for a day of remembrance. The hospital where Olivia volunteered held a candlelight vigil attended by hundreds. Her nursing school created a permanent memorial garden where students could reflect and remember. Olivia's funeral drew thousands, many who had never met her but had been touched by her story and her father's relentless devotion. The procession stretched for blocks, passing through the heart of Princeton. Along the route, residents placed daisies, a final tribute to James's daily ritual that had come to symbolize enduring hope in the face of tragedy. In the aftermath of finding Olivia, prosecutors strengthened their case against Thomas Mercer. The charges expanded to include first-degree murder. Evidence recovered from the burial site, including fibers matching Mercer's work uniform and a distinctive soil composition found only at Blackwater Lake, created an overwhelming case. Prosecutors now had physical evidence, DNA, timeline consistency, and proof of Mercer's connection to the burial location. Despite this mounting evidence, Mercer maintained his silence. His defense attorneys attempted to suppress various evidence, claiming improper search procedures and questioning the chain of custody for DNA samples. These motions were systematically rejected by the court, pushing the case toward trial. For James, the legal proceedings represented the final chapter in his quest for justice, but they couldn't fill the void Olivia's absence had created. The apartment where he had maintained Olivia's command center now felt hollow. The maps, timelines, and theories were no longer needed. The daily flower ritual had served its purpose, not bringing Olivia home alive as he had hoped, but guiding him to the truth. Friends worried about James's purpose now that his driving mission had reached its tragic conclusion. What would sustain him after fighting so hard for so long? The answer emerged gradually as James began speaking at community safety forums, then at police training sessions about missing persons cases. His perspective as a family member who had navigated the nightmare of a missing child offered valuable insights to law enforcement. In spring 2009, as the trial date approached, an unexpected development altered the case's trajectory. Thomas Mercer, facing overwhelming evidence and the prospect of a highly publicized trial, offered through his attorneys to plead guilty to all charges in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. The district attorney presented this offer to James, explaining the benefits: guaranteed conviction, no traumatic trial, no appeals process that could drag on for years. "He'll never leave prison," the prosecutor assured him, "but you won't have to relive everything in court or risk a jury finding reasonable doubt." James wrestled with the decision for days. Part of him wanted Mercer to face a public trial, to have his crimes exposed to the world, to potentially face the ultimate punishment. Another part simply wanted it over, to close this chapter without more pain and uncertainty. Ultimately, James agreed to the plea deal, but with one condition: Mercer must provide a full confession, explaining exactly what happened to Olivia. "I need to know the truth," James insisted. "Not just for closure, but because every missing person's family deserves to know what happened to their loved one." On May 15, 2009, Thomas Mercer entered his guilty plea before a packed courtroom. As part of the agreement, he provided a written confession that was read into the record. The details were heart-wrenching. He had observed Olivia's routine for weeks, noting her volunteer schedule and walking route. The night of November 8th, he waited in his car near the park entrance, approached her offering help with her heavy backpack, then attacked when she turned away. The confession confirmed what evidence had suggested. Mercer had taken Olivia to his home that night, then transported her body to Blackwater Lake the following evening. The calculated nature of his actions, described in his own emotionless words, sent ripples of horror through the courtroom. James sat stone-faced throughout the proceeding, Detective Kaplan beside him. When asked if he wished to make a victim impact statement, he approached the podium slowly, unfolding a single sheet of paper. "I won't speak to the man who took my daughter," James began, his voice steady despite the emotion visible in his eyes. "He doesn't deserve my words. Instead, I want to speak about Olivia and what her life meant." For the next 10 minutes, James described his daughter not as a victim, but as the vibrant, compassionate young woman she had been. Her determination to become a nurse after watching her mother receive excellent care during her cancer battle. Her habit of bringing coffee to homeless individuals near the hospital. Her infectious laugh that could brighten the darkest room. Olivia lived with purpose and kindness, he concluded. The man sitting in this courtroom existed without either. Her 19 years brought more light into this world than his entire life. That's what I want everyone to remember today, not how she died, but how beautifully she lived. The judge sentenced Mercer to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. As guards led him from the courtroom, he never once looked at James or acknowledged the devastation he had caused. His final act of cowardice was facing the wall as he exited, refusing to meet the eyes of the community he had betrayed. Outside the courthouse, James faced a wall of reporters and cameras. For months, he had avoided public statements, letting the investigation speak for itself. Now, with justice formally delivered, he offered brief remarks that would be replayed on news programs nationwide. "Today doesn't bring Olivia back," he said, fatigue evident in his face. "It doesn't erase the pain of losing her, but it does mean that the man responsible can never hurt another family. It means the search is over, and it means I can finally focus on remembering my daughter's life rather than investigating her death." As James stepped away from the microphones, Detective Kaplan shielded him from further questions. Their partnership, forged through 18 months of shared determination, had evolved into a deep friendship. She understood better than anyone the complex emotions beneath his composed exterior, the relief of resolution alongside the permanent ache of loss. In the months following the sentencing, Princeton gradually returned to normal. Media attention faded. The community began healing. But Olivia's case left lasting impacts on local safety initiatives. The university installed additional lighting along campus pathways and expanded security escort services. The hospital created a buddy system, ensuring no volunteer or staff member walked to parking areas alone after dark. The police department revised protocols for missing persons cases, emphasizing the critical first 48 hours of investigation. For James, finding a new normal proved challenging. The apartment where he had raised Olivia and later conducted his tireless search felt haunted by both her absence and the intensity of his investigation. 6 months after the sentencing, he made the difficult decision to move to a smaller place closer to the university. The day before the move, Detective Kaplan arrived to help pack the last boxes. She found James sitting in Olivia's untouched room, holding a framed photo of his daughter in her volunteer uniform. "I keep wondering if I could have prevented this," he admitted, voicing the doubt he rarely shared with others. "If I had picked her up that night instead of letting her walk home." Kaplan sat beside him, choosing her words carefully. "You know better than anyone that what-ifs don't change reality. You did everything humanly possible after she disappeared. No father could have done more." James nodded slowly. "I know that logically, but a parent's heart isn't always logical." He placed the photo carefully in a box marked "Bedroom Priority." "I've been thinking about what comes next. I can't bring Olivia back, but maybe her story can help other families." This reflection marked the beginning of James Bennett's transformation from grieving father to advocate. In late 2009, he established the Olivia Bennett Foundation with a mission to support families of missing persons and advocate for improved investigative resources. The foundation focused on 3 key areas: providing financial assistance to families during searches, funding advanced DNA testing for cold cases, and training law enforcement on best practices for missing persons investigations. The Foundation's first initiative provided emergency grants to families in the critical first days after a disappearance, covering costs for printing flyers, temporary lodging near search areas, childcare for siblings, and basics like groceries and bills when parents had to leave work to search. James understood firsthand how quickly financial pressures could compound emotional trauma. "When your child is missing, you shouldn't have to worry about paying rent," he explained at the Foundation's launch event. "You need every ounce of energy focused on finding them." Princeton University partnered with the Foundation, offering office space and administrative support. Local businesses provided initial funding. Detective Kaplan joined the advisory board, bringing her investigative expertise and connections within law enforcement. Within a year, the Foundation was supporting families across New Jersey, then expanding throughout the Northeast. James found unexpected healing through this work. Each family he helped, each case that reached resolution, whether with reunion or recovery, brought purpose to his loss. The Foundation became Olivia's legacy, extending her compassionate spirit to families experiencing their darkest hours. As the second anniversary of Olivia's disappearance approached in November 2009, James prepared for what he expected to be a difficult day. He planned a quiet visit to her grave, followed by dinner with close friends who had supported him throughout the ordeal. But 2 days before the anniversary, he received a call that would once again alter his path. Detective Kaplan's voice carried an urgency that immediately caught his attention. "James, I need you to come to the station. There's something you should see in person." When he arrived, Kaplan led him to a conference room where several officers stood around a table covered with case files. "After Mercer's conviction, we began reviewing cold cases with similar patterns," she explained. "Initially, we focused on New Jersey and neighboring states during the time he lived in the area." She opened a folder containing photos of young women. "These are missing persons cases from regions where Mercer lived before coming to Princeton. 2 from Delaware, 1 from Connecticut, 1 from upstate New York near that cabin. All women between 18 and 25, all disappeared while walking alone, all cases unsolved." James studied the photos. 4 young women whose stories might mirror Olivia's. "You think he's responsible for these too?" "We've been quietly investigating for months," Kaplan confirmed. "We found soil samples from the Connecticut victims' clothing that match the distinctive composition at Blackwater Lake. We have a witness who placed Mercer's blue Honda near where the Delaware victim was last seen." The implications were staggering. Thomas Mercer, the quiet maintenance worker who had blended seamlessly into Princeton's community, might be responsible for multiple disappearances across several states. His years of moving between jobs and locations suddenly appeared not as the restless wandering of an unremarkable man, but as the calculated pattern of a predator staying ahead of suspicions. "Why are you telling me this now?" James asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Because we're preparing to interview Mercer in prison," Kaplan explained. "He has nothing to lose now. He's already serving life without parole. But he might respond to you. These families deserve the same answers you fought for." The request was enormous, to face the man who murdered his daughter and potentially help solve other families' nightmares. James took a day to consider, ultimately agreeing for one reason. He remembered the torment of not knowing, and couldn't bear the thought of other parents living with that same pain if he could help end it. 2 weeks later, James found himself in a sterile prison visiting room, separated from Thomas Mercer by bulletproof glass. Detective Kaplan sat beside him, while additional officers observed from an adjacent room. Mercer's expression remained blank as they entered, his eyes revealing no emotion at seeing the father of his victim. The meeting with Thomas Mercer in prison marked a turning point in the investigation. For nearly an hour, James sat across from his daughter's killer, maintaining remarkable composure as he spoke not of vengeance, but of closure. "I'm not here for myself," James began, his voice steady despite the churning emotions beneath. "I'm here for other families living with the same questions that haunted me for months." They deserve the truth about their daughters, sisters, and friends, just as I deserved the truth about Olivia. Mercer remained silent initially, his eyes cold and unreadable. But as James continued speaking about the importance of resolution, showing photos of the missing women from other states, something shifted in Mercer's demeanor. Perhaps it was James's dignified approach, so different from the anger Mercer expected. Perhaps it was the realization that his secrets would eventually be uncovered through forensic evidence regardless of his silence. After what seemed an eternity, Mercer finally spoke. "The cabin," he said flatly. "Check the northern property line near the stone wall." Those 10 words launched a multi-state investigation that would eventually connect Thomas Mercer to 7 disappearances between 1999 and 2007. 3 additional sets of remains were recovered from the Blackwater Lake property in locations Mercer eventually identified. Forensic teams discovered evidence linking him to 2 other cases in Connecticut and Delaware. For James, facilitating this breakthrough brought complex emotions. The knowledge that his efforts helped other families find answers provided some meaning amid his grief. Yet each identification was another reminder of lives cut short, dreams unrealized, and families forever altered by one man's actions. The investigation into Mercer's crimes continued for years, becoming one of the most extensive serial predator cases in the Northeast. Law enforcement from 5 states collaborated, sharing evidence, techniques, and resources. Princeton police, particularly Detective Kaplan, remained at the forefront, coordinating efforts and applying lessons learned from Olivia's case. In spring 2010, as the scope of Mercer's crimes became clear, national media descended on Princeton once again. True crime programs sought interviews with investigators, prosecutors, and especially James Bennett, whose role in breaking Mercer's silence had become legendary among law enforcement circles. James declined most interview requests, preferring to focus on the Olivia Bennett Foundation's growing work. "This isn't about me," he told Kaplan when she delivered another batch of media inquiries. "It's about supporting families still searching and preventing these tragedies from happening again." The one exception came when the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit requested his participation in developing training materials for law enforcement handling missing persons cases. James agreed immediately, seeing an opportunity to transform his personal experience into institutional knowledge that might save lives. At FBI headquarters in Quantico, James worked with specialists to identify critical elements from Olivia's case. They analyzed what went right: Detective Kaplan's persistence, the preservation of evidence, community involvement, and what could have been improved, faster testing of the jacket fibers, earlier background checks on park employees, more comprehensive initial searches. From these sessions emerged the Bennett Protocol, a structured approach to missing persons investigations, emphasizing immediate action, evidence preservation, and family integration into the process. The protocol recognized that family members often notice details or connections that investigators might miss and recommended creating formalized channels for this collaboration rather than keeping families at arm's length. By late 2010, police departments nationwide began implementing elements of the Bennett Protocol. Training programs incorporated James's insights about the family experience, teaching officers how to better support relatives while efficiently gathering critical information. Statistics eventually showed improvements in both case resolution rates and family satisfaction with investigations. On the 3rd anniversary of Olivia's disappearance, Princeton University dedicated the Olivia Bennett Center for Safety Awareness, a campus facility offering self-defense classes, safety technology demonstrations, and educational programs about situational awareness. The center embodied Olivia's nursing spirit of care and protection, focused on prevention rather than fear. At the dedication ceremony, James cut the ribbon alongside Detective Kaplan and university officials. Hundreds attended, including nursing students wearing symbolic white cardigans, similar to what Olivia often wore over her scrubs. As James addressed the crowd, he appeared transformed from the desperate father who had searched Harrison Park 3 years earlier, still grieving, but now channeling that grief into purpose. Olivia wanted to help people heal, he told the gathering. While her dream of becoming a nurse was stolen from her, this center extends her spirit of protection. Every student who learns to stay safer here carries a piece of her legacy forward. The center became a model for other universities, with similar programs established at campuses throughout the region. James frequently visited these satellite programs, sharing Olivia's story and emphasizing that safety awareness wasn't about living in fear, but empowering individuals to recognize and respond to potential dangers. Meanwhile, the Olivia Bennett Foundation continued expanding its mission. With growing donations and grants, the foundation established a forensic testing fund specifically for cold cases involving missing young adults. This initiative addressed a critical gap in the justice system, cases that remained unsolved due to limited resources for expensive forensic analysis rather than lack of evidence. The Foundation's first major breakthrough came in early 2011, when its funding helped solve a 12-year-old disappearance in western Pennsylvania. Advanced DNA testing identified remains found near an abandoned mine, bringing closure to a family who had spent over a decade wondering about their daughter's fate. The girl's mother embraced James at the press conference, announcing the identification, both of them understanding a pain few others could comprehend. By mid-2011, the foundation had assisted in resolving 7 cold cases and was providing support to dozens of families nationwide. James assembled a team of experts, retired detectives, forensic specialists, victim advocates, and mental health professionals, creating a comprehensive support system for families navigating the nightmare of a missing loved one. Throughout this period, James maintained a close friendship with Detective Kaplan. Though officially retired from active duty in 2010, she joined the foundation as its law enforcement liaison, bringing her investigative expertise and professional network. Together, they created a bridge between families and authorities, translating between the emotional urgency of loved ones and the methodical processes of investigation. Their partnership became the subject of a feature article in a national magazine, highlighting how a detective and a victim's father had transformed a tragedy into a force for positive change. The article described them as unlikely allies who became an unstoppable team, noting how their complementary perspectives created a holistic approach to missing persons cases. When asked about their working relationship, Kaplan responded with characteristic directness. "James taught me that family members aren't obstacles to an investigation. They're essential partners. His insights changed how I approach every case." James's perspective was equally appreciative. "Sarah showed me how to channel raw emotion into effective action. She gave structure to my desperate need to find Olivia, and later to help other families." Their model of collaboration influenced how police departments nationwide interacted with victims' families. Training programs began emphasizing the value of family insights, while teaching officers how to help relatives participate constructively in investigations without compromising evidence or procedures. In autumn 2011, as the 4th anniversary of Olivia's disappearance approached, James received an unexpected letter. The envelope bore the return address of a women's prison in Delaware, the sender identified as Martha Weber, Thomas Mercer's sister. James initially set it aside, unsure whether reading her words would reopen wounds better left healing. After 3 days of consideration, he finally opened the letter. Martha explained she had followed Olivia's case and the subsequent investigations from afar, horrified to learn of her brother's crimes. She described growing up with Thomas, noticing concerning behaviors their parents dismissed, and losing contact with him as adults when his behavior became increasingly erratic. "I cannot ask for your forgiveness," she wrote, "nor do I seek to excuse what Thomas did. But I wanted you to know that your courage in facing him helped me find my own. I've provided investigators with childhood journals and photos that might help identify other victims from years before the crimes they've already connected to him. Perhaps this information can bring closure to more families who have waited too long for answers. The letter concluded with a simple statement. Your daughter's legacy lives on, not just in the lives you're helping through her foundation, but in the truth you've helped uncover. This correspondence led to another investigative breakthrough. Martha's materials helped authorities link Thomas Mercer to 2 additional disappearances. Dating back to the early 1990s, cold. Case units in 3 states reopened. Investigations based on new timeline information about Mercer's whereabouts during his young adulthood. James shared the letter with Detective Kaplan, who immediately recognized its potential value. This could be the missing piece for several unsolved cases, she noted. Martha might have insights into locations or patterns we haven't discovered yet. With James's permission, Kaplan arranged a meeting with Martha Weber at the Delaware Women's Prison, where she was serving time for unrelated fraud charges. The information she provided helped investigators understand Thomas Mercer's evolution as a predator, including triggering events and geographic movements that aligned with previously unconnected cases. By early 2012, the combined efforts of multi-state investigators, forensic experts funded by the Olivia Bennett Foundation, and insights from Martha Weber had connected Thomas Mercer to 11 disappearances spanning nearly 2 decades. 9 victims were identified and returned to their families for proper burial. 2 cases remained open, with investigations continuing. For each identification, James personally contacted the family, offering not just notification, but understanding that only someone who had walked the same path could provide. These difficult conversations often lasted hours, with James answering questions about his own journey, from uncertainty to terrible truth to eventual purpose. The not knowing is its own unique torture, he often told these families. Learning the truth is devastating, but it also ends the constant wondering. It allows you to direct your pain toward remembrance and, when you're ready, toward helping others. Many of these families eventually became involved with the foundation, creating a network of mutual support and advocacy. Some established scholarships or memorial projects in their loved ones' names, transforming private grief into public good. Others joined James at law enforcement training sessions, helping officers understand the family perspective during missing persons investigations. This growing community of survivor families provided something essential that even the most compassionate outsiders couldn't offer: the recognition that came from shared experience. They understood the dreams that visited in the night, the birthday celebrations for someone who wasn't there, the random moments when grief ambushed you in grocery store aisles or at stoplights. In spring 2012, the foundation organized its first national conference, bringing together families, law enforcement, forensic experts, and mental health professionals. The 3-day event in Princeton included workshops on investigation techniques, sessions on navigating grief, and panels discussing policy reforms needed to improve missing persons responses nationwide. James opened the conference with remarks that acknowledged both the painful circumstances that brought everyone together and the strength found in collective action. "We are united by loss," he told the audience of over 300 attendees. "But we are also united by purpose, to protect others from experiencing what our families have endured, to support those currently searching, and to remember those we've lost, not just through grief, but through positive change." The conference culminated in a candlelight vigil at Princeton University's Olivia Bennett Center. Families held photos of their loved ones, creating a powerful visual representation of lives cut short and the enduring love that survived their physical absence. As darkness fell, hundreds of lights illuminated the campus, a stark contrast to the darkness that had once surrounded these cases. Media coverage of the conference reached national audiences, raising awareness about missing persons issues and highlighting the work being done to improve responses and resolve cold cases. Lawmakers took notice, with several state representatives attending the event and committing to legislation, supporting better resources for investigations. This increased attention led to expanded funding for the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, NamUs, a federal database created to cross-reference missing persons reports with unidentified remains. The Foundation had long advocated for mandatory use of this system by all law enforcement agencies, a policy that could have identified connections between Mercer's victims years earlier. Following the conference, several states passed Olivia's law, requiring police departments to enter missing adults into national databases within 24 hours, rather than waiting the traditional 48-72 hours. These legislative victories marked a shift from individual case advocacy to systemic change, expanding the Foundation's impact far beyond what James had initially imagined. As the 5th anniversary of Olivia's disappearance approached in November 2012, Princeton magazine published a comprehensive article titled, "5 Years Later, How Tragedy Transformed a Community." The piece chronicled not just Olivia's case, but how it had catalyzed improvements in campus safety, police procedures, and community awareness throughout the region. The article included interviews with students who had never met Olivia, but benefited from safety programs created in her memory, police officers trained under the Bennett Protocol, and families who had found resolution through the Foundation's work. It painted a portrait of a community forever changed, more vigilant but not fearful, more connected rather than isolated by tragedy. For the anniversary, James chose a different approach than previous years' solemn remembrances. He organized the first Olivia's Walk for Awareness, a nighttime procession retracing her final route but transformed into a celebration of safety and community vigilance. Participants carried solar-powered lanterns rather than candles, symbolizing sustainable light against darkness. Over 200 people participated, including Princeton students, medical center staff, and residents. The walk concluded at the Olivia Bennett Center, where James announced a new Foundation initiative, a scholarship program for nursing students who demonstrated exceptional compassion in patient care, honoring Olivia's original career aspiration. The first recipient, Maria Alvarez, embodied qualities similar to those Olivia had shown during her hospital volunteering. A second-year nursing student who worked extra shifts caring for elderly patients, Maria accepted the award with tears in her eyes, promising to carry Olivia's spirit of compassion into her practice. This moment crystallized something important for James. Olivia's legacy had expanded beyond the tragedy of her death to inspire others pursuing the healing path she had intended to follow. Though she never had the chance to become a nurse, her story now supported others fulfilling that same dream of service. By 2013, 6 years after Olivia's disappearance, the landscape of missing persons investigations had changed substantially. The Bennett Protocol had been adopted by police departments in 38 states. Advanced DNA testing was routinely applied to cold cases. Families were more frequently treated as partners rather than peripheral observers in investigations. These changes coincided with technological advances that James embraced through the Foundation. They launched a mobile app, allowing users to receive geographically targeted alerts about missing persons in their area, similar to Amber Alerts, but expanded to include adults. The app included safety features like virtual companions for walks and automatic check-in systems for solo travelers. Social media campaigns organized by the Foundation helped locate several missing young adults within days of their disappearances. The rapid response success stories provided hopeful counterpoints to the tragic cold cases that had initially driven the Foundation's creation. On a personal level, James began taking small steps toward rebuilding his life beyond the Foundation work. He started teaching engineering courses at Princeton University part-time, reconnecting with his professional expertise while maintaining his advocacy. He joined a support group for bereaved parents, acknowledging that even amid his public strength, he needed private spaces to process his ongoing grief. Detective Kaplan noticed these changes with approval. "You're finding balance," she commented, during one of their regular coffee meetings. "The foundation is your purpose, but it's not your entire life anymore." Olivia would be proud of that. James nodded thoughtfully. "For a long time, I was afraid that moving forward meant leaving her behind. Now I understand it's possible to carry her with me while still living my own life." This evolving perspective informed a significant decision in late 2013 when the Foundation received an opportunity to establish a national headquarters in Washington, D.C. The move would place them closer to federal agencies and lawmakers, expanding their influence on national policy. But it would also mean leaving Princeton, the community that had supported James through his darkest days and where Olivia's memory remained most vibrant. After careful consideration, James chose a middle path. The Foundation would establish the D.C. office with a dedicated staff, but maintain its Princeton headquarters, with James dividing his time between locations. This approach preserved the Foundation's local roots while extending its national reach. The Washington office opened in February 2014 with a reception attended by lawmakers, law enforcement leaders, and victim advocacy groups. James delivered remarks emphasizing the importance of collaboration across agencies and jurisdictions, a lesson learned from the complex investigation that ultimately connected Mercer's crimes across multiple states. "Predators don't respect state lines or jurisdictional boundaries," he told the gathering. "Our response systems must be equally fluid, sharing information and resources to protect the vulnerable and bring answers to families." This principle guided the Foundation's next major initiative, creating standardized protocols for information sharing between agencies investigating similar cases. The project addressed a critical gap that had allowed Mercer's pattern to go unrecognized for years, despite similarities between disappearances in different states. Working with the FBI and Department of Justice, the Foundation developed a pattern recognition database specifically for cases involving missing young adults. The system flagged similarities in victim profiles, circumstances, geographic patterns, and physical evidence, alerting investigators to potential connections between seemingly unrelated cases. This technology proved transformative when implemented in 2015, identifying links between active investigations that might otherwise have remained separate. Within its first year, the system helped connect cases in 3 different regional clusters, leading to suspect identifications and several arrests. In autumn 2015, approaching 8 years since Olivia's disappearance, James received news that brought his journey full circle. The last unidentified victim connected to Thomas Mercer had been positively identified through DNA comparison with family members. All 12 young women whose lives Mercer had stolen now had their names restored, their remains returned to families for proper remembrance. For James, this completion brought a sense of closure different from what he'd experienced after Olivia's identification. It represented the fulfillment of the promise he'd made in that prison visiting room, to help other families find the answers he had fought so hard to obtain. At a private gathering for the families of Mercer's victims, James spoke about this milestone. "Today marks the end of one chapter in our shared journey. Each of our daughters, sisters, and friends has been found and honored. The questions that haunted us for years have been answered. But our work continues, for other families still searching, for communities still vulnerable, and for a system still in need of improvement." The gathering was both solemn and celebratory, acknowledging profound loss while recognizing the meaning found through collective action. These families, once strangers united only by tragedy, had become a powerful force for change. Together, they had transformed personal grief into public advocacy that protected others and brought light to the darkest of cases. As the evening concluded, James stood with Detective Kaplan watching the families interact, sharing stories, showing photos, offering comfort through understanding that only they could provide. "This is Olivia's real legacy," James said quietly. "Not just her foundation or the protocols named after her, but these connections, people finding strength together when they thought they had none left individually." Kaplan nodded. "From one case came all of this. Because you refused to stop searching, because you kept placing those flowers every morning, because you believed resolution was possible even when evidence was scarce. And because you listened when most would have moved on," James added. "Together, we found not just Olivia, but a purpose neither of us could have imagined." As they stood there in the gentle evening light, surrounded by families finding healing through shared experience, the journey that began with one father's desperate search had expanded into a movement. Olivia Bennett, the nursing student who never had the chance to fulfill her healing mission, had nonetheless inspired a different kind of healing that touched countless lives across the nation. Her story, which began in tragedy on a November evening in Princeton, had transformed into a legacy of protection, awareness, and resolution that would continue guiding others from darkness into light for years to come. In the decade following the resolution of Thomas Mercer's crimes, the Olivia Bennett Foundation evolved from a small grassroots organization into one of the nation's leading advocacy groups for missing persons and their families. By 2017, the foundation operated offices in Princeton, Washington, D.C., and Chicago, with satellite partnerships in 23 states. What began as one father's desperate search had transformed into a movement that changed how America responded to missing persons cases. On the 10th anniversary of Olivia's disappearance, Princeton University hosted a national symposium titled "A Decade of Progress, the Olivia Bennett Legacy." Law enforcement officials, forensic experts, legislators, and families gathered to reflect on advancements in investigation techniques, victim support, and preventative education. The three-day event highlighted not just how far they had come, but the work still needed. James, now in his early 60s with silver threading through his once dark hair, delivered the keynote address to a packed auditorium. Though his face showed the lines of grief and time, his eyes remained bright with purpose as he approached the podium. 10 years ago tonight, I waited for my daughter to come home," he began, his voice steady and clear. "That wait became a search, the search became a mission, and that mission grew into the community gathered in this room today. None of us would have chosen the path that brought us here, but together we've transformed personal tragedy into collective progress that saves lives." The statistics supporting his words were compelling. Since implementing the Bennett Protocol, participating police departments reported a 63% increase in swift resolutions for missing persons cases. The pattern recognition database had connected serial predators across jurisdictional boundaries in 17 instances. Advanced DNA testing funded by the foundation had resolved 112 cold cases nationwide. "These numbers represent families who found answers," James continued. "They represent communities protected from continued threats. And most importantly, they represent missing persons who were located quickly before harm could come to them." The symposium featured a memorial exhibition in the university's art gallery, photographs and personal items representing individuals who had been found through the foundation's work. Each display included not just the story of disappearance and discovery, but how the case had influenced specific improvements in investigation techniques or reporting systems. Central to the exhibition was Olivia's corner, her nursing textbooks, volunteer badge, and the scarf found at her recovery site. Beside these items stood a continuous video display showing the global impact of her story. Training sessions using the Bennett Protocol in countries across 5 continents. Safety centers modeled after Princeton's, and testimonials from families who had found resolution through the Foundation's support. Detective Sarah Kaplan, now the Foundation's National Law Enforcement Liaison, guided visitors through the exhibition. Though officially retired from police work for several years, she remained a formidable advocate, her silver hair cut in the same no-nonsense style she'd worn during the original investigation. Her expertise had shaped the Foundation's practical approach to working with authorities while representing families' interests. The most significant change isn't technological, though those advances matter tremendously, she explained to a group of police academy instructors. It's philosophical. We've shifted from treating missing persons cases as individual incidents to recognizing patterns and connections across jurisdictions. And we've moved from viewing families as emotional distractions to valuing them as essential partners in investigations. This philosophical shift was evident in the Foundation's newest initiative, unveiled during the symposium, the Family Advocate Program. This nationwide network paired newly affected families with trained advocates who had experienced similar situations. These advocates helped navigate interactions with law enforcement, media, and the wider community, while providing emotional support from a place of genuine understanding. Martha Weber, Thomas Mercer's sister, had become one of the program's most effective advocates. Released from prison in 2015 after serving her sentence, she had dedicated herself to the Foundation's work, offering unique insights into recognizing concerning behaviors and patterns that might indicate predatory tendencies. My brother hid in plain sight for years, she told a rapt audience during a panel discussion. He maintained a careful facade of normalcy while systematically hunting vulnerable young women. The warning signs were there, but no one knew how to recognize them, including me. By teaching communities what to watch for, we can identify potential threats before they escalate to violence. Martha's candor about her family history and her brother's crimes had initially drawn skepticism, particularly from victims' families. But over time, her genuine remorse and commitment to prevention earned respect even from those most deeply wounded by Thomas Mercer's actions. Her willingness to speak publicly about painful truths helped countless families understand the complexities of predatory behavior. Following the symposium, James embarked on a national speaking tour, visiting college campuses, police academies, and community centers. His presentations blended personal narrative with practical education, emotionally compelling, yet focused on actionable safety strategies rather than fear-mongering. At each venue, he shared Olivia's story, not just her disappearance and the subsequent investigation, but who she had been, her compassion as a hospital volunteer, her determination to become a nurse after witnessing her mother's illness, her habit of leaving encouraging notes in her friends' textbooks before exams. When we reduce missing persons to statistics or headlines, we lose sight of the individuals at the center of these cases, James explained to students at a California university. Olivia wasn't just a victim or a case number. She was a young woman with dreams, talents, and an incredible capacity for kindness. Every missing person represents a similar universe of potential. That's why this work matters so deeply. The tour culminated in a congressional hearing where James testified alongside law enforcement officials and victim advocates, supporting legislation to standardize missing persons protocols nationwide. The proposed National Bennett Protocol Act would require consistent procedures across all jurisdictions, mandate timely entry of cases into national databases, and establish funding for advanced forensic testing in cold cases. As James addressed the committee, his testimony wove together policy recommendations with the human impact of current system failures. He described families who received different responses depending on which side of a county line their loved one disappeared from. He explained how crucial evidence was overlooked because of limited testing resources. He detailed how pattern recognition across jurisdictions had finally connected Mercer's crimes after years of treating them as isolated incidents. These aren't abstract policy considerations, he told the assembled lawmakers. These are matters of life and death, of families torn apart or given the closure they desperately need. The improvements we're advocating have been tested and proven effective. Now they need to become standard practice everywhere. The legislation passed with bipartisan support, a rare achievement in the polarized political climate. At the signing ceremony, James stood behind the president, watching as the pen moved across the document that would implement nationwide the changes born from his daughter's case. In the audience sat families whose lives had been touched by the Foundation's work, some who had found resolution through cold case initiatives, others reunited with missing loved ones through improved early response systems, and still others who had protected vulnerable family members through education programs. Their presence represented the ripple effect of one father's refusal to give up. As spring bloomed in 2018, over a decade after Olivia's disappearance, the Foundation faced an unexpected challenge. A series of national news articles questioned whether cold case funding primarily benefited white, middle-class victims, while cases involving minorities or disadvantaged populations received less attention and fewer resources. The criticism struck at the heart of the Foundation's mission, prompting James and the board to conduct a thorough review of their case selection processes. The resulting data confirmed concerning disparities. Cases involving young white women did indeed receive disproportionate resources compared to equally deserving cases involving minorities, men or individuals from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. Rather than becoming defensive, James acknowledged the findings publicly. We've unintentionally perpetuated the same biases that exist throughout the criminal justice system, he admitted in a forthright press statement. This revelation is painful but necessary. We cannot fulfill our mission of helping all families if we're not reaching those who need us most. The Foundation responded with a comprehensive equity initiative, deliberately restructuring its case selection protocols, diversifying its board and staff, and establishing specialized outreach teams to connect with underserved communities. They created training materials addressing implicit bias for law enforcement partners and developed culturally sensitive support resources for diverse families. Maria Alvarez, the nursing student who had received the first Olivia Bennett scholarship years earlier, now led this initiative as the Foundation's Director of Community Outreach. Her personal experience as a first-generation American helped shape approaches that respected cultural differences in how families responded to crisis and interacted with authorities. Different communities have different relationships with law enforcement, Maria explained during staff training. Some families hesitate to report missing loved ones due to immigration concerns, language barriers, or historical mistrust of police. Our job is to create pathways that address these realities while ensuring every missing person receives equal attention and resources. The Foundation's honest acknowledgement of its shortcomings and comprehensive response earned respect even from initial critics. Within 18 months, their case demographics showed measurable improvement, with more equitable distribution of resources across racial, gender, and socioeconomic lines. More importantly, they had expanded their reach to communities previously underserved by missing person support systems. As the Foundation evolved, so did James's personal journey. After years of defining himself primarily through his grief and subsequent advocacy, he began reclaiming other dimensions of his identity. He returned to engineering full-time, accepting a research position at Princeton that allowed him to mentor young students while pursuing innovations in sustainable energy systems. He developed new friendships beyond the circle of victim advocates and law enforcement professionals that had surrounded him for years. He joined a community theater group, discovering an unexpected talent for set design. He even began dating occasionally, tentative steps toward personal happiness that would have seemed impossible in the early years after Olivia's death. Detective Kaplan observed these changes with quiet satisfaction during their regular coffee meetings, which had continued despite their busy schedules. "You found your way back to yourself," she noted one afternoon. "Not by leaving Olivia behind, but by expanding your life beyond the foundation." James considered this thoughtfully. For years, I worried that finding joy would somehow dishonor her memory. Now I understand that living fully is how I truly honor her. She wouldn't have wanted her father to exist only as an extension of tragedy. This philosophy informed a significant announcement James made on the Foundation's 15th anniversary in 2022. Standing before staff, board members, and supporters gathered at the Princeton headquarters, he shared his decision to step back from day-to-day operations while remaining on the board of directors. 15 years ago, I created this foundation because I needed to transform my grief into something meaningful, he explained. Today, it has grown beyond anything I could have imagined, not because of me, but because of all of you who joined this mission. The time has come to entrust its future to the incredible team that will carry it forward. He announced Maria Alvarez as the new executive director, the former scholarship recipient whose nursing career had evolved into advocacy leadership. The symbolism was powerful. A young woman pursuing the healing profession Olivia had aspired to would now lead the organization born from her tragedy. Maria accepted the position with grace that honored both the Foundation's history and its future. The Olivia Bennett Foundation began with one father's love for his daughter, she acknowledged. It continues because that love expanded to embrace all missing persons and their families. Under my leadership, we will honor that legacy while meeting the evolving challenges ahead. The transition marked not an ending but an evolution. James remained involved as a board member and public speaker, but stepped back from administrative responsibilities. This change allowed the Foundation to benefit from fresh perspectives while maintaining its core mission and values. Throughout 2022 and 2023, the Foundation continued expanding its impact under Maria's leadership. They launched an international program, sharing investigation protocols with law enforcement agencies worldwide. They developed a groundbreaking virtual reality training system, helping officers experience family perspectives during missing persons cases. They created specialized support resources for particularly vulnerable populations, including elderly individuals with dementia and young adults with developmental disabilities. In autumn 2023, approaching the 16th anniversary of Olivia's disappearance, James received an unexpected letter that brought his journey full circle. The envelope bore the Princeton Medical Center logo, and the contents moved him to tears. The hospital's nursing school had created an annual award in Olivia's memory, honoring a student who exemplified exceptional compassion in patient care. The letter invited James to present this recognition at their graduation ceremony. Enclosed was a photo of the memorial plaque, listing recipients dating back to when Maria Alvarez had received the original scholarship years earlier. "Your daughter never had the chance to complete her nursing education," the letter stated. "But through this award, her spirit of compassion continues to inspire a new generation of healers. These nurses carry her legacy into hospital rooms, emergency departments, and community clinics nationwide." On the day of the ceremony, James stood before the graduating class, looking out at young faces eager to begin their careers in healthcare. As he described Olivia's dedication during her volunteer work and her dream of becoming a nurse, he felt a sense of completion different from anything he had experienced through the Foundation's policy achievements or case resolutions. "My daughter wanted to ease suffering and bring comfort to those in pain," he told the graduates. "Though her life was cut short, her spirit lives on in each of you who has chosen this healing path. When you place a gentle hand on a patient's shoulder, when you advocate for someone who cannot speak for themselves, when you bring both technical skill and human compassion to your work, you extend Olivia's legacy in the most meaningful way possible." The student receiving the award, a young man who had worked night shifts as a nursing assistant while completing his degree, embodied the qualities Olivia had shown in her brief time as a hospital volunteer. His clinical instructors described his exceptional ability to connect with patients experiencing confusion or fear, bringing calm presence to chaotic situations. As James presented the award, he felt a profound sense of Olivia's presence, not as a painful absence or a tragic memory, but as a continuing influence, generating ripples of compassion through lives she had never met. In that moment, he understood that his daughter's impact extended far beyond the foundation bearing her name or the protocols created from her case. Later that evening, James visited Olivia's grave, as he did each year on significant dates. The cemetery was peaceful in the autumn twilight, leaves drifting gently across well-tended grounds. He placed fresh daisies, still her favorite after all these years, and sat on the bench he had installed beside her headstone. "I saw your nurses today," he said softly, continuing the one-sided conversations that had brought him comfort for 16 years. "They're carrying your compassion forward, just as the foundation carries your name. You've touched more lives than you ever could have imagined." As twilight deepened into evening, James reflected on the journey from that November night in 2007 when he first realized Olivia was missing. The desperate father who had searched Harrison Park calling his daughter's name had walked a path he never would have chosen, yet somehow found meaning beyond the tragedy that began it. The story that started with one young woman's disappearance had expanded into a national movement that protected countless others. The father who placed flowers faithfully each morning, refusing to abandon hope when evidence was scarce, had transformed personal determination into systemic change. The community, shaken by betrayal, had rebuilt itself stronger, more vigilant and more compassionate. Most importantly, Olivia Bennett, remembered not just for how she died, but for how she lived, continued to inspire compassion, healing, and protection long after her physical presence had ended. Through the foundation bearing her name, through nurses receiving awards in her memory, through families finding resolution because of protocols created from her case, her spirit remained a force for good in a world that had taken her too soon. As James walked from the cemetery in the gathering darkness, he carried with him not just grief for what was lost, but gratitude for what had grown from that loss, a legacy of light that continued to guide others from darkness toward hope, healing, and home. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.